We're really honored to have you here. For those of you who don't know, Bill is our former sheriff, or the longest serving sheriff in Colorado history, right? Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you for inviting the old retired sheriff to speak to you today. You know, I was at a meeting not too long ago. It was a big celebration of the graduation of a bunch of peace officers. Young people that decide to become peace officers in this day and age are rare, but they were graduating from the academy, and this one fellow gave a remarkable speech, and he was chief of a large city police department, and just a really eloquent speech. And I was driving home back to Telluride, and I thought about his speech, and I realized I couldn't remember a word he said. So anyway, then Amy asked me to give an eloquent speech today, and I thought, I'm just not very good at that. So you got the old guy with a few words, and it's not going to be easy. Anyway, I was sitting around this morning, and I thought, what are my complaints about the current king? And so I kind of wrote down some of them. I'm going to share them with you very quickly. He's obstructing the laws of naturalization of our immigrants. And that bothers me, because we're all immigrants at one point. He refuses to pass laws to protect the immigration of needed workers for our farms, ranches, and industry. They're all here to work. In my experience, that's what they're here for. Obstructed the administration of justice, invaded our courthouses with agents to arrest immigrants, made judges dependent on his will alone, telling them and criticizing them if they make any kind of decision either in the past against him or if they're doing it currently. Sent federal law enforcement officers into our communities to harass our people. Signed executive orders that pretend to be legislation. He is cutting off trade with all parts of the world. He has imposed taxes on us without legislation in the form of tariffs on desperately needed goods. He has violated the due process of law against a significant portion of our population. He has deprived some people of the benefits of a trial by jury. He is transporting some of our immigrants, whom for decades we have invited into our country and have long lived among us, and transporting some citizens as well, beyond the seas to be held in foreign lands without a trial. He has inflamed and excited domestic insurrections. Well, I lied. I didn't make this up. I just read the Declaration of Independence this morning, and that's what all these parts are from. So you guys are really the spirit of 76. And don't let that spirit be hijacked by the fascists, because that's what they've done. We should have spirit of 76 here among us, because that's what we need. So, not remembering a word of that speech, that eloquent speech, I'm going to have 4 words that I want you to remember when you leave today of my speech. So the first one is declaration. I just said the Declaration of Independence, and it might be a time for a new one. And we need to get to our elected officials, our school boards, our town councils, our county commissioners. Every one of them should sign a declaration of where they stand on this issue. Don't let them shrink away from their duty to stand up against this fascism. You know, it's no time for moderation. You know, moderation in the defense of liberty and basic human dignity is no virtue. And that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing a lot of people that won't stand up. And we have to make them do that, especially if they're elected officials. The next word is sheriff. Now, a lot of people don't realize the history of sheriff, but it's the reeve of the shire is where the word comes from. It was ancient England. And the sheriffs, if you remember the Sheriff of Nottingham, the villain in the Robin Hood series, he was appointed by the king. All the sheriffs were appointed by the king. And if the sheriff didn't do what the king liked, he'd fire him or not pay him. The sheriff was responsible for enforcing the king's law, maintaining the dungeon. He had the power of posse comitatus, where he could gather all the people to defend the castle or to put out a fire or something along those lines. So it was kind of a powerful position in ancient England. And the king brought that to the colonies. In our original 13 colonies, there were sheriffs. There were all the elected officials that we have elected now were appointed by the king. And the king didn't like what the sheriff was doing. He wasn't arresting the rebels. He'd fire the sheriff. And in turn, if the surveyor, the county surveyor, didn't rule in a land dispute in favor of the loyalist, he'd fire the surveyor. If the assessor didn't assess the loyalist property real low and the rebel property high, he'd fire the assessor. This goes through all our different county officers. If the coroner ruled that the soldiers committed homicide upon shooting down some protesters, then the king would fire the coroner and get the coroner to rule properly a new one that it was justifiable. So after our glorious revolution, the rebels said enough of that. That's not going to happen again. All of our county officials will be elected as we are a democracy. They will be directly held accountable only directly to the population that votes. And so in Colorado, they took it even a step further, where the sheriff is not beholden to anyone. Not even the Board of County Commissioners can't even set my salary. We had to go to the state legislature sets the sheriffs and all the elected officials' salaries, so they're never beholden to one another. And they're all equals in every county. So it's the only peace officer position in the world that is voted in a democratic fashion to hold that office. So nowadays, we have a king who is trying to federalize the sheriff's offices. And this has been tried before. In 1850, the Runaway Slave Act was voted in by Congress, and it required really all people, everyone, to help federal marshals in the apprehension of runaway slaves, primarily in the North. Well, the sheriffs of those days, they were voted in office by people who were anti-slavery. In the North, there was a strong anti-slavery movement, and they would not vote for a sheriff that would enforce the Runaway Slave Act. Today, we are faced with a similar situation. The method that they are trying to force the sheriffs to comply with ICE orders, hold our immigrant residents in the county jail that we all pay for, and hold them without a warrant, with just a piece of paper that says they believe that they are in the country illegally, that the government believes this, not signed by a judge. And they want us to hold these people in our county jail. And the way they are trying to get us to do that is to make us beholden to them. And that's my next word, beholden. And we are all beholden to the federal government these days. They take our money in taxes and take it to Washington, then turn around and give it back to us in the form of grants and payments to our schools, to our our county, to our cities, in grants to other nonprofits. We've all become addicted to the federal dollar. We need to stop that. We need to sever our relationship with the federal government. Today it's bad, it could get even worse, but I heard today they are actually developing a system to cut off all federal funding to the state of California. It's coming to us. So there's no point in backing down now. There's no point in continuing to take that money. Because once we have it, we'll be like Judas. We'll try to cast the silver away after the dirty deed is already done, because we will feel like we have to do the work of the federal government against our friends and neighbors, who will someday then disappear in the middle of the night, never to be heard from again. And that's what's coming. So let's prepare ourselves now and insist that our governments start weaning themselves off of that federal money. Because the sheriffs and the other elected officials are going to get a tremendous amount of pressure to bow down and lick the king's boots for a handful of silver. We have to stop that. I'm sorry, am I dragging this on?
No. Keep going.
You're the guys who want the old sheriff to come and talk, okay? So don't blame me. I'm done. I am done, okay? I'm done with peacekeeping. There's a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, I had this great friend of mine who's passed now, and would always call me Old Penny, dear John Fonstock. And why would he do that? Why would he call me Old Penny? Dirty copper! Hey! 1820 penny. And that penny's a good size. It had some weight to it. And you know, it was a good sized coin that I just gave Amy. Amy will show it to you later. And it meant something, a penny for your thoughts. And people talked about pennies all the time, and now the penny is done, over with. Because the penny costs more to make than it's worth. It takes 3.5 cents to make a penny, it's only worth a penny. This is going to happen to our dollar as well. It will eventually cost more to print the dollar than it's going to be worth, because the value is going to continue to go down. This is their plan with the big, beautiful bill. It's going to add trillions of dollars to our debt, and the only way we're going to get out of it is if we make pennies worthless or non-existent, and eventually make our money worth non-existent. And we're going to have to start all over again with nothing. And that is their plan. They are planning on ruining all our government programs by making us get into such severe amount of debt, we won't have any money for anything, or the money that they'll be sending us is worthless. And the next step in that, and all kings have done this. Read history. All the kings, they used to, every time the gold would come through their coffers, they'd slice just a hair off of that coin, that gold coin. And so over a period of time, every time the king got the coin, it would become less and less valuable, less and less weight. Meanwhile, he'd be making more coins out of the gold that he shaved off the government's coins. And we're doing the same thing today, just we can't really see it as well. But eventually, like all the kings in the past, their money will become worthless. They'll whittle it down to where the gold coin is hardly even felt. And so then they'll start, what do they do next? They sell off their land. And that is the next step in this process, and we see the beginning of it today. They are going to sell off our federal lands to try to stop this terrible debt problem that we're in. Rather than, I'm sorry, tax breaks are just not in the game right now. If we want to save our nation, we have to have proper taxation, and we have to watch our spending. And we can start that locally. We need to set the example in our communities. We just can't go and say that once again with our hand out all the time, give us, give us, give us more money. We need to start looking at our own local governments and where can we save some money, because we're going to go into a crisis in the future. And I can't stress this enough. Just one quick story. When I was sheriff in 1980, the commissioners called me upstairs. My office was in a little stone building here next to the courthouse. They called me upstairs. They had a problem with one of my expenditures. And okay, what was wrong? They said, well, you put on the sheriff's expenditures this month 75 cents for a can of shoe polish. Well, in those days, we were in strict uniforms and we kept our shoes polished, our boots shiny, and I thought it was a legitimate thing because that kind of required the deputies to have shiny boots. And Raymond Snyder or maybe Dan Woodard, one of the old commissioners, said, well, we don't buy all the citizens polish. Why should we be buying you guys polish? So I left 3/4 on their table and never charged it again. But they set the tone. They set the tone that this is the public's money, and unlike kings, we're going to take care of it. We're going to watch it, and we're going to make sure that we don't have runaway costs in our local government as well. And today we have assistance upon assistance upon assistance just to manage things that are really not all that difficult. Anyway, I'm going to try to end this somehow. I want you to remember my 4 words. Declaration. We're going to make a personal declaration. We're going to insist our elected officials make a declaration. Declaration where they stand today. Draw the line in the sand. Are you with us or are you against us? There's no moderate in this fight. Sheriff, not just sheriff, but remember that each one of these elected officials that we have owe an oath to our Constitution and to our public. Keep them accountable to our democracy. Beholden, let's not get beholden to other people's, to the federal government's money, or we will become their slave. And finally, remember the value of a penny that no longer exists in our country. I don't know what they're going to call me in the future. If you can't say old penny, they're going to have to say something else. The young kids won't know what that means, old penny. So let's hope for a reliable currency and not this ridiculous amount of debt. Thank you all very much. I'm sorry I dragged that.
Thank you so much, Bill. And, you know, I just want to emphasize one thing that Bill said, and that is we all have a responsibility. We all have a voice. We all can talk with our elected officials and make demands for what's important to us. So don't forget that. Okay.